Alright, as I mentioned in the last video, we've got these complex forms like the ribs that we want to now start to add muscles on top of. We might want to go in and start to delineate some of the spine. You know, this might also be part of what we want to do. But what I'm going to do right off the bat is just create a layer. Okay, you have to do it at the highest subdivision level. So I'll go to the highest subdivision level and create a layer. And what I want to look at now is adding in some muscles on top of this. And since it's in a layer, it's going to be a little easier for me to art direct it and control it. So let's say we've got the clavicular portion. Yeah. And alright, now I'll get the clavicular portion of the pectoralis. And I want to make sure that the shoulder, the deltoid, is on top. Make sure the bicep is on the bottom. Okay. Just brushing back and forth. The clay tubes, clay buildup is really good for this alpha. Keep in mind, I've adjusted my lazy step to 0.05 and my depth in bed is set to 10. So these are low measurements. And keep in mind, this pectoralis is very thin. But I am adding volume in this area where, the pectoralis generally is going to have something, which is in this kind of this transition from the sternum over to its insertion along the humerus. So I want to swell that a little bit. And it's kind of nice to create this appearance of separate fibers. And I'm coming down to the 7th rib. Undo. Let's put that in there. And there you go. Really work on these overlaps. This is something all beginning sculptors miss. Make sure you can create the illusion that that bicep is flowing underneath the pectoralis. You do that a lot with planes and cutting lines in like you see me doing. But now I think it's pretty obvious that it's carving in there. And we've also created, well, it looks pretty freaky actually. And from a distance, I need to add a little bit more bulk, I think. But when you build, try to keep these guys in mind. Try to keep the ribs in mind. Carve that space in a little bit. Just working on this. Bear with me. I'm going to add a little bit more volume. I'm going to undo that one stroke. A little bit more volume in that sternal portion as it transitions into the portion along the rib. Alright. Remember, it's all in a layer, so you can be fairly loose and free. But work to try to create a transparency to it. It's hard, but when you pull away, it would be nice to have a sense that you got these fibers in there. So I'm going to lower this down, and we're going to start to create fibers. So my embed is going to go higher. Let's set it to 30. And I'm working on fibers right now, just these individual like little pieces of muscle. And let them be loose like this. I'm going to show you some post-processing. Well, actually, you've already seen the post-processing on the head. And we can do the exact same thing on the body. Alright. Turn off the recording. Alright. Does it look good? I think so. I think we're okay. So I'm going to keep in the record mode, and let's do the abdomen. Again, clay buildup, and go slow. I'm going to cut in to emphasize the rib, and then pull in some strands. But now I need to set my embed back to 10. And so in terms of the abdomens, there's a portion of them that's going to overlap. The abdominals, there's a portion that's going to overlap the ribs, so I'm just getting that some volume. Then the next head for these guys is going to be a little bit below. Okay, another section a little below that, and then we get the portion below the belly button. Yeah. There we go. Okay, that's a pretty full belly I put in there. Let's use Damien's standard brush. Get that belly button. Back into clay buildup. You can build form one way, just make sure you go back over the top with Alt and you start to subtract and then establish the layering in the direction that you want. So that's one of the benefits of having the depth embed set pretty low. Okay. I'm going to be okay with that because the abdominal muscles really just, it's just lines you're putting in. You know, not too much more than that. What's going to be really interesting is the external oblique. Okay, and so let's talk about that. The external oblique is going to be coming down, pulling up into the ribs. So it's doing this really beautiful thing. Really beautiful. Now keep in mind with the external, in fact actually the fibers are going slightly different. Let me show you. There's two portions. There is the portion along the belly, basically the belly of it, and then the portion that's wrapping around the ribs. So when it meets the ribs, it's changing its directionality slightly. And then those chunks are going to finger in with the serratus anterior, which are coming in and connecting to the ribs. So that's going to create some nice fingering. But first, we got to add the volume and start to create the striations and the sense of things. So this is all again with build-up. Pushing Alt. Okay, it just blends in with the abdominal muscles, but try to keep some separation. Wraps around that anterior. It can bulge over the top, but our zombie's not likely to have much bulging over the top of its bones. It's going to come back here to the 10th rib, 11th and 12th. Alright, and let's just make sure I'm getting the connection in there with the ilium. We're going to also be going over that surface for the lat. another muscle. And slowly just crossing the form here. It's on a separate layer, so I have a lot of flexibility, and the clay brush is also just a really beautiful brush. But if you go over the form lightly and then start to focus on your hits down here in the belly, you can create some really beautiful form. Just like that. The goal is just, it's part of the craft. How are you hitting it? Okay, let's make sure that is very visible. Liking it. Nice texture. Go in there and augment it, because this is your chance. So I'm going to set my embed to 33 and just a few fibers, not much. Try to stay away from the center, actually. That's a bad idea. Try to stay away from the front. Do that with symmetry off. So I pressed X on the keyboard just to turn symmetry off, because any symmetry along the center is going to be very, 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 very visible. Okay. Embed is back to 10, or in this case I set it to 9. And I'm just flattening this out. Okay, let's go back. Let's show the entire model. Turn record off, and there we go. So before, after. It's all stored on a separate layer, so we've got a lot more control. That's what's really important to me at this point. It just allows me to be much more flexible with my processing, and I can be much more selective about things. So back into record mode, Control N, back into the torso, and we have muscles along the back to look at. So the last one that I'm going to do that's part of this lecture is the latissimus dorsi. So the latissimus dorsi is going to come down. In fact, let's show the whole thing. Let's show it from the side view. So the latissimus dorsi is going to come down like this. You know, you see it in the anatomy books. It's this really interesting muscle, and it looks like it's just huge, right? It takes up all this space. Well, keep in mind, the latissimus dorsi is only, its volume is in a small area underneath the scapula. That's what's really missed a lot of the times. And then you get these other muscles here, the erector spinea muscles. So the medial and the lateral form, and then the lat. In the books, though, everything looks like it's the lat. Okay, and that's misleading. These guys are really, down here in the bottom, are really responsible for a lot of form. Okay, so the lat is going to come around, and it's actually inserting into the front of the humerus. It's inserting in this deep corner in here. So we got to figure out how to get that to happen, because that's, I don't know, it sounds like a beast to me. So the first thing I do with clay buildup is I'm going to just add volume coming from the bottom of the scapula, because that's going to be the boundary. That's going to be what I use for the boundary. And the directionality is going to go horizontal, because it's the directionality is coming from the spine up, spine up, spine up, spine up, spine up, spine up. And lower that. What's my embed? Yeah. And then keep in mind that if you know where the acromion process is, the directionality of the lat is going to be right underneath that. So you don't have to know much more about that to position it. And you can do this from a side view. Acromion process, straight down, although I am going to arc it slightly because of the bend. And then I'm going to make my way down to the clavicle, not the clavicle, the sacrum. Damn it, Jim, I'm not an anatomist. There you go. You see those muscle fibers? See how it's weaving in? It's a genius technique, a genius brush. And let's pull this in. Now we're going to miss a few things because we actually don't have ribs really done well in the back. So why don't we just kind of go in and suggest them? So I'm cheating right now. But it's really important for you to see, how you can kind of what are the limitations, basically. If you don't actually put those ribs in there, you're going to be in trouble. You're just really not going to see them. I'm going to set my embed to 4. It's really thin in the back as it comes down here to the erector spinae muscles and the sacrum, which we've already largely covered. Okay, a little bit of extra volume, set embed to 9. Really want that medial form. In fact, what we probably want is to go to the lower subdivision level, dig the spine in. Now, it's a debate. Are you going to dig the spine in, or is the spine going to be out? And it's probably going to be out in this guy. So what I'm going to do is dig around it. And then also dig around the lateral form. So I'm doing a couple of different things here. And then separate the medial form, and then dig around the spine a little bit more. Okay, trim dynamic. Okay, we can easily recapture all of that texturing that I just did. So even though I'm losing all of that texturing, that's just par for the course. I don't even think twice about that. What I really want is to get this spine and get the form underneath accurate, because then once you have the form underneath accurate, the rest is cake. Okay. I get the sense that the lumbar region is really digging in. There. Okay, I'm not numbering the vertebrae or anything like that. This is all pure suggestion, pure implied form. Okay, coming over. But now I can go in and kind of pull pockets, which is kind of neat. Just a little form I'm just going to grab and press Alt. Okay, and then I'm going to set my embed 33 and just pull some strands out. Might want to pull the strands out without symmetry and run back and forth. Okay, symmetry back on. Let's get the serratus anterior. Serratus anterior are going to be coming from the scapula, and they go all the way to the first rib, all the way down. And so we don't need much, but what's important is to know where the rib is, and then to understand how the serratus anterior is going to be connecting. So it's going to connect to the top of the rib, and it just needs a little hit. Just a little hit. So I'm going to come in, it fills a certain volume, overlaps the rib above it, connects to the rib below it. Okay, just a little hit, and then come back over the top and get the lat working. Control Shift click. Highest subdivision level. There we go. Before, after. Before, after. Okay, you can keep doing all of that with the different parts of the body. I'm going to save the project, and we're going to look at some post-processing next.